purpose that we start in this, the NAACP is to reestablish our legal redress committee. And being that so many things have happened in our inner city that has been a terrible nightmare, Dr. King had a dream. The dream now is a nightmare. And it's time for us to change that. And we've come together with our legal redress committee to do just that. One of the things we have to address also while I'm speaking with you writers of the newspaper is we sent out a press release to notify the TV stations of calling this press conference together because of the things that are addressed in our community and how we're hopefully planning on changing it. We need the support of the media to do that. Unfortunately, the media only comes when there's an incident of a shooting or someone being killed. We need them to come to make a difference in our community, to clean up our community, and to make sure that things that are going on within our community are going on in the right way to be positive, to help our young black adults, people, children, to go in the right direction. So if the news media could take upon themselves to be responsible to the NAACP, one of the biggest, largest civil rights organization in the United States and in the city of Pittsburgh, to come out and to be a part and get this information out in our community. We're reestablishing this legal redress because of disproportioned number of African Americans, male arrestees and detainees. The poor people that's in the inner city has a situation here that needs addressed. They need help. The people we have at this table, and first of all, let me introduce who's at the table. My first Vice President, Charlene McAbee, our board member, Cheryl McAbee, and one of the attorneys that came on board that's volunteering a lot of his service and his knowledge, elder attorney, Milton Rayford. He has a lot of hats that he wears. That all relates back into our community, that all has addressed the issues in our community. And he has a strong concern for our community that he's coming out to step to the forefront, along with other attorneys that we've met with. The day happened to be the coldest day of the year. The day happened to be after the Martin Luther King nights that were out there. But however, there's no excuse for many to not be present. It really isn't, not with the state of our community. There is no excuse. I'd like to introduce him so that he can appropriately address how strong we're coming about the legal issues in our community. You want to address that?
Sure. I mean, within the last couple months, we've had, in our inner city, we've had an occasion where a young African American male was driving in his car. Police officers sought to stop him. They opened the door of his car, which is bad policy to do, and jumped in the car to try to get him to stop it. He ended up getting shot several times, ended up being in the hospital, and he ended up being charged with a criminal offense. Okay? Admittedly, recently, the district attorney admitted that was bad policy. Okay? We had a 911 call that was given by a young lady calling that she was in distress, possible domestic violence call. Now, when the officers got to the scene, they were met through the door of a man who ended up ultimately being one accountable for this girl's death. But once again, the district attorney admitted that the police violated their own policy in a domestic violence case, that they should have stayed during the scene and made contact with the complainant and not taken someone else's word that she was okay. Okay? Thirdly, we have a situation on the south side where the police officers are off duty, otherwise on duty, whatever issue they had in terms of weaponry, discharged their weapons into a crowded situation, shooting into the wrong car. Admittedly, once again, the district attorney indicated that policy was not followed in that particular case. Now, in our community, there's the privacy rights of poor people and inner city people are almost non-existent. Pennsylvania has the longest history in terms of supporting the Fourth Amendment. In other words, Judge Cappy, our Chief Justice, wrote a landmark decision in the case of Commonwealth versus Edmonds that talks about just how important and how valuable the privacy rights of Pennsylvania citizens are. In Pennsylvania, based on our Constitution, based on our legal history, we have a stronger individual rights stance than even the federal government. Okay? But yet, in spite of that, the privacy rights of poor and inner city people are almost non-existent. 70% of all traffic stops in the city are African American males. And they're stopped for things such as light on the license plate not lit up, brake light might not be working, windows may be tinted, they forgot to signal on turning a right turn, those types of things. The courts call those kind of stops pretext stops, P-R-E-T-E-X-T, they're pretext. In other words, they're a ruse because you really want an opportunity to harass the people that are inside. Once they stop these African American males, many times, they are cuffed without probable cause, which means they're arrested. Their vehicles are searched without probable cause, without exigent circumstances, without a warrant, and without their valid consent. And that's got to stop. Because once again, we have a history in this state of privacy rights. Yesterday the president was talking about we the people and our country, and we care about the individuals. And I appreciate what he said about, you know, the different segments that he mentioned, that they are equal. I believe in those segments too, but one thing that he did not say was inner city African American males in particular. There's a joke downtown now among everybody in the legal community. They, you know, when you talk about driving under the influence, DUI, now they joke about driving as a black male, DWB, driving while black. That's how frequently African American males are pulled over. There's a disproportionate number of African American males in Allegheny County Jail. Yes. I mean, you know, you got 3,000 African American males in the county jail this past summer, and you have 1,000 white males. Now you think about that. Think about that. Why? Because if they're getting pulled over more often, they're getting arrested more often, their rights are being violated more often, and from the New York City to Chicago, everywhere else, everybody's finding this to be a problem in their inner cities. That cases that are brought that cannot be sustained once they get to court, these gentlemen are sitting in jail the whole time until they get to court many times, because they're already on probation. They've already been saddled with something. So they're detained even before they get to court to be adjudged guilty or the motion to suppress to be granted. In many of those cases where the person sits in 6 months in jail before the case comes to court, they're put in a position of having to plead guilty just to get out of jail. Even though they don't have the resource, the money, to hire a private lawyer, to get the detainer lifted, to advocate on their behalf the things I'm talking to you about, a motion to suppress, so that your constitutional rights are set free. In other words, to prove that the police officers violated their constitutional rights. And so I'm thankful that we have a president of the NAACP that wants to return the NAACP back to the legal forefront where it really gained national notoriety and was such a bulwark force in the march with Martin Luther King. See? So, with that being said, it's interesting. African Americans and poor people are always defendants and they're always victims. It's like the president said. Now, if there was a shooting up here on the corner here, you'd have every news media person in the world. Absolutely. Okay? You see it on 11, 2, and 4. Because that's fostering something in the public's mind that look at them. They look at them. Here they are shooting themselves. Here they are being arrested, dealing with drugs and stuff. And a lot of times people think that the end justifies the means. Well, not in the country of free people, because you can find something in somebody's house. But let me tell you something. You don't think that you can find drugs in the house in Sewickley? But I tell you one thing that's not going to happen in Sewickley. You're not going to get in their house without a warrant. And you're not going to pull their car over as a pretext. And no officer is going to take a guy to jail merely because he's got a light bulb out on his license plate. More than likely they'll say, Mr. So-and-so, can I help you home? Mr. So-and-so, I just want to remind you, next time you go past the auto parts store, get you a light bulb for that license plate. But we don't get that treatment at all. So therefore our rights are being violated. Black people are very rarely plaintiffs in civil actions. We're defendants, we're victims, but we're rarely plaintiffs in civil actions. See, the city should be sued for shooting into the wrong car.
Right.
The city should be sued for not coming in. That's wrongful death action for them not making contact with the complainant in that case and she ends up dead. The city should be sued for the police officer following the wrong procedures of jumping in an automobile, opening up the door and jumping in and shooting somebody. Okay? But we can't be plaintiffs. It's almost like a black person can't be a plaintiff. A black person can't be injured. A black person can't receive a civil remedy. We saw that in the Jordan Miles case where he clearly, that should have been a case that ended up hung in a trial because nobody acted like a violation of a young black man can't be beaten unrighteously and recover money damages. That's sick. You know what that speaks to? It speaks to the value of life that you think that is contained therein. It speaks to you don't even think he's an individual to have his individual rights to be protected. That's what it speaks to.
All right.
That's really what it speaks to. It speaks to what the value this society puts on an African American male's life. That he can't be injured in recovery. There can't be a wrongful death surrounding him. There can't be an injury surrounding him that is compensatable. People have this idea that he's faking it. He can't. Black women can't fall and recover. They can't be burnt and recover. They can't be abused and recover. They can't be defamed and recover. They can't be libeled and recover. Because there's an image out there that says whatever they got, they deserve it. And they don't recover. So that's got to stop. African Americans and poor people are discriminated against in the workplace. Are you aware that your criminal record should not prohibit you from obtaining employment in your desired field? So in other words, a lot of people have a criminal record and they apply for a job. Their criminal record might be something that they did when they were 19 years old and they were with a bunch of guys that maybe stole some stuff from a store, retail theft. Guy goes on, got a retail theft record, goes on and gets his license to drive a truck or something like that. He's got his license to drive the truck on the highway, but he applies to the trucking company after going through the tedious process of getting the license that's required to drive the truck, and they say, I'm sorry, you got a criminal record. What does a retail theft have to do with his ability to drive and transport? Absolutely nothing. So out of Chicago, where the president's hometown is, there came a body of law that's now stating that's unconstitutional to do. And matter of fact, they're asking people that are employers to take those kind of questions off the questionnaire and do a more in-depth conversation, have an in-depth conversation. You know, let's be a forgiving society. Let's be a compassionate one. Which one of us has no fault? I went to school with so many white kids, they had all kind of records, but because their daddy owned the company, they got a chance to hire their son, or they had a friend that owned this company, and they looked past his criminal record. In white society, it's called sowing your wild oats. In black society, you can't, it's like you live your life dancing around, slipping on a banana peel. You can't tiptoe around, you can't make a mistake, you can't make human error, otherwise you're discriminated, you can't even get a job. In the area of housing, which I know the president and the NAACP cares a lot about, are you aware that there are questions which housing plans, either public or private, can no longer ask due to their discriminatory nature? And you know, there was a time when disparate treatment is when they call you a nigger on the job. Well, nowadays they don't call you a nigger on the job. What they do is they treat you like a nigger on the job.
All right.
And then because the old Title VII cases used to be like you gotta have something concrete. They had to have called you a name, or they had to have touched you improperly. Well, nowadays it's what you call subtle. It's not, disparate treatment cases are harder to get now and harder to prove. So black people are fired from their jobs and laid off from their jobs, and they're asked questions on housing applications that are improper. Because they are basically saying, in the housing area, what they're saying is, used to be a thing called, there's restrictive covenants. In other words, we don't mind people moving into this housing plan, but we don't want any Negroes. They're called restrictive covenants. Nowadays, I had a case last week where they didn't want this guy to move into the Arbor Apartments, even though he had been there already for 9 years and had 4 different applications and had never been a problem person, but they made him register under Megan's Law for something involving he and his former ex-wife. A grown woman, not a kid, a grown woman got into a situation, and they said he lied on the application back here, and now they want him out, based on the fact that now they make him register. So it became a mob mentality. And they actually sent him to the magistrate. Praise God, Magistrate Hoots, African-American woman, saw through it and says, I'm not allowing you all to evict him. But those are, that's the subtle type of nature of the thing that's going on now. And so you need to know that the public needs to know that there are questions which housing plans, either public or private, can no longer ask due to their discriminatory nature on housing applications. So those are just a few. But that's the spirit of it. And that's the passion that you see in the president and those that are sitting here. Because at the end of the day, this room ought to be packed.
Absolutely. With
media people and camera people just hearing the truth about what's really going on in our city. So that's where it's at. And thank you for, I'm proud to be here. And you know, like I said, like the president said, I'm here as a volunteer because, hey, I'm an African-American male. You know what I mean? You know, I want to see us be a better city. I mean, we got an opportunity here, and I'm thankful that we got an NAACP president that cares about this kind of stuff. But I don't need to be paid to do this, because at the end of the day, the demographic that's being harassed the most is the demographic that I belong to, and I'm from Homewood, Brussia, and I hate to think that our city can't be better than this.
I want to thank you so very much. That's where we're trying to bring our community back to the point. It's not business as usual any longer. The business is our community. And the people such as Attorney Rayford, our first Vice President, Charlene McAbee, and our board member, Cheryl McAbee, they're both attorneys. All 3 that's sitting here, exclusive of myself, are attorneys. And we're going to address the issues not with burning the candles, not with marching. We've burned enough candles. They soon blow out. We blow them out when the evening's over. We've marched enough. We may have to do those 2 things again, but that's just to remind folks of something. But our goal is to have our legal attorneys within our community address the actual issues that's going on in the community and make a difference. So our young people see that the law works. Right now the law is not working at all in our community. So that's what we're looking at to do is NAACP, the greatest, largest civil rights organization. We're going to do that. We're going to accomplish those goals. And we're going to be inclusive of many people. Once I think our community see and hear things, we'll do something to join in and make a difference. If this is to be the #1 city, it has to have the diversity in it. It has to have the health conditions, the education, for all the people, people of color, and people in each community. It must have that. We cannot survive without it. And this city will not survive without the diversity. And I would like to see wealth come back in the black community. And wealth is not always financial. Wealth is your health. Wealth is your education. And these are things that have to come back into our community. I want to thank those of you that have come out, because you know we should have had a room full of people just to hear Attorney Rayford address what he did. And we're going to be redundant with this. This doesn't stop today. This will continue on. As my dad used to say consistently, one monkey don't run the show. And that's not going to work that way in our community any longer. Again, it's not business as usual. And I want to thank Elder Attorney Rayford for your persistence in doing this and putting it together with many other people. We have more attorneys involved. They will be here again, and we're coming back again until we get information about all the internal investigations that are supposed to be going on the issues that he just addressed. Is there something you ladies would like to say, Charlene?
No, I think everything's been said. The only thing I'd like to say is that we want people to know, people of color to know that if they have an issue, they are to come to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We're going to have attorneys that are going to be available to them. We're going to do what we need to do in the courts, not on the streets. And we want them to come to us because we're going to help them and we're going to be here.
Again, let me reiterate what she just stated.
We will meet legality with illegality.
All right. All right. We want you to know your rights and call us if you feel your rights have been violated.
That's it.
Amen.
412-471-1024. Call us if you know your rights have been violated. And I thank you for coming out. Especially you, darling.
This is fantastic. This is on the eve of the 50th celebration of the March on Washington, which is in August. So this is like...
Yeah, which my mother took me to when I was 8 years old. My mother took me to the March on Washington. She was the women's auxiliary president of the NAACP.
Yeah,
it stays in your blood, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is.
When your
parents take you to civil rights. My mother was a civil rights leader, so she taught me. She taught me well. So
it's August 24th, the 50th celebration this year.
Was there any questions?
Is the NAACP still partnered with Duquesne University Law?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. They have been coming out continuously. Tracy Gant is one of the volunteers that work with labor and industry. And yes, we are still partnered with, she works with that particular committee, and she's been doing that with that committee. We've gotten a broader scope now to be inclusive of criminal cases, of civil cases that we can have handled outside of what Tracy is able to do.
And as an African-American male that was just appointed as the head of the Public Defender's Office, have you seen any difference from any African-American males being arrested to going to court and the outcome?
No, I know. I mean, I believe that Mr. Housey, who's the head of the Public Defender's Office, is he just got there. But you know, it's got to be a spiritual transformation on all fronts, and it's hard to do from his position without the proper resource and without knowing how to call on the greatest resource of all, which is the spirit of the right thing to do. So you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the spirit of the right thing to do, it'll be the same thing. It takes people that are willing to sacrifice, not be paid for it, but willing to sacrifice to bring about a change. Martin Luther King was not paid to head the SCLC, nor was he paid to take a bullet in the neck.
That's right.
Nor was he paid. You know, and our Lord and Savior was not paid to hang on the cross. He did it for the glory that was set before him, which was you and me. And so it takes somebody willing. It takes somebody willing to stand up. You see, to do it. You know, because when one of us dies, we all die. When one of us is as Martin Luther King said, we're only as strong as the weakest of us. You know, there's some of the best of us in all of us, and some of the worst of us in all of us. But we have a tendency to highlight the worst and not the best in a certain segment of us. And that has got to change.
And I hope
there's a new spirit here now. The spirit is to be right. It's not to be popular, the great I am. It's us, it's we. And that's my whole spirit, that we have to change our community. Else we're not going anywhere. And that's inclusive. When it changes for the black community, it galvanizes the white community. Those changes always pass on and transcend to other races of people. Those laws aren't just changed to say, just do Connie Parker, the black woman. Those laws are changed to do any woman out there that it happens to. That 911 law should have protected the black woman that was on Lowell Street there in East Liberty. She shouldn't be gone today. Her mother shouldn't bear those pains that she's bearing every day. We read an article in a paper and we look at it and think, wow, oh my goodness, how horrible. But tomorrow, you're about your business. Her mother does not move in that same direction. And that's what bothers me so greatly, to know the things that happen. And once these bullets pierce our young people's bodies, they're never, ever the same. And I don't care what no one says. They may be stitched up, but they're never the same. So this is what we have to look at. And folks, when you get a turn at this type of thing, you can understand it. But until you get a turn and put those shoes on your feet, you don't know what's going on. I don't want them on my feet. I want to see that it stops before Connie Parker gets a turn. And that's where we all have to work. The community has to work. We, a few of us are sitting here now, you know, Rosa Parks refused to get up out her seat. Her sitting down stood us all up great and tall across the face of this country. It's time that we all stand up and wake up. Rosa Parks wasn't the great I am. Little woman that came from a day's work, doing the job out there like we all do. Coldest day that we've had this year, but we're out here. God has a mission for each one of us in this room. Hopefully, when I'm finished, someone will say, well done, my faithful servant. Because that's what I mean to do in this community. And once we start things changing, as Attorney Rayford just said to me, I responded about the news not being here, that they come and cover everything that's negative. Something that would change our community, the cameras aren't flying. As they say, that if it bleeds, it leads. Well, we got to turn our society around. Bleeding all the time shouldn't always be leading. When you're bleeding, you're losing something. We want to gain something. And we want to gain our community back. And it can be done. It can be done.
I'm sorry.
You were talking about burning candles and doing marches and stuff like that. Do you have anything planned on in the near future to help change this? And who would you go march against? The city, D.A. Sapala, Nate Harper? I mean, who would
still there?
I mean, yeah, I mean.
Well, it's not a marching or burning a candle against anything specific. The marches are for the issues that we're trying to address. The burning the candles symbolizing someone that we're trying to recognize that either has lost their life or something has occurred to them. What I'm saying now is we'd like to attack it in a way that maybe we'll get a better response from our elected officials, from our community as a whole, to do it legally. When people see that their life's of value, what has happened to them is of value. We've been insulted with the Jordan Miles case. That was a great insult, totally. This young fella's life was no value. Beat his brains on him. He can't go back to school. That's a big insult. That they couldn't find in the courts to justify some sort of monetary value to it. And that's an insult, a monetary value, but they didn't even do that. So that's what we're looking at, so that people can respect when you break the law, something's done in the right direction.
There's a presumption, whether we like it or not in our society, that an African-American male running down the street is not just jogging, but he's either running from the police, he's on his way to steal something, get out of the way because he'll assault you. Or when a black boy goes into a store, or when he's confronted by the police that he's got a weapon in his pants, or something such as that. There's an unspoken presumption that way. And you know, I can be, I used to meet a friend of mine over at the Steeler games, and when I'd be running, because I like to see the kickoff, I'd park at the William Penn, and I like to jog, and I like to run. So I would park at the William Penn Hotel and run all the way to the, Heinz Field. And you see the looks of the people to see this big black guy just running, not with his pants sacked down in a nice sweatsuit, going over there. It's like I get treated exactly the same. And by the way, African American professionals, they're given the choice of either selling out their people to conform, or lose their job, or lose their money. I know this firsthand. Let me tell you something. There's Allegheny County, and Pittsburgh in particular, does not reflect the national attitude when it comes to African American people and people of color, Hispanic or otherwise, in professional places. It does not reflect that. People in Pittsburgh, it's probably, it's like the gentleman that writes the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the editorial, the African, Tony Norman. He wrote an article, I think, is that his name?
Yeah, it's Tony Norman.
He wrote an article this morning. He's like, you know, most of America is still baffled by the fact that President Obama won 2 terms. Baffled by it. Now, I know in Allegheny County, most of the wealthy people are not, or more than baffled by it, they're angered by it. And then when you see that white men, because basically every white man who had anything, basically all white men voted for Mitt Romney. That's what the statistic came out afterwards. You know what I mean? But they lost. And so that what that means is a very wealthy woman one time, they used to help me fund the school. I remember she told me, she said, Milk Boy, when Obama wins and I'm working for him, you're going to see a backlash like you've never seen before. Because white men think they're losing something. They're losing their grip of power. And most people think that money is power, unfortunately. But to bring the loop back to that is, I think we just need more court cases, because some things don't change unless you hit people in their pocket.
Exactly.
Because they value money so much in our country. That's why the one statement that was made, I really believe this, that African Americans are all right at being defendants or victims. But when we're plaintiffs in a civil action, it's almost like we can't recover for asbestos. We can't recover for the stuff that other people recover for. Because everybody considers us either a sluggard, or we're making an excuse, or we're not being honest and truthful about the nature of our injuries. Because my mother used to always tell me I was a good football player. My mother says, Milton, I don't want you carrying that football, because they'll make you they'll make you run a horse next. I'd rather you become a lawyer or something, because people don't mind you being a black entertainer or a black sports person. But I don't want you getting your brains knocked out playing football. I want you going up there and being to change something that really matters. You know what I mean? And I tell you, Pittsburgh does not reflect the national referendum that it's time for the old boys network to come down. And a black man doesn't walk out of the house with a presumption that he's a man with all the benefits and freedoms and liberties afforded there too. He walks out of the house presumed to be guilty of something.
Right.
And most white people don't know that. They don't know the opposite. Most white men that are 57 years old, like I am, they walk out of a house with a presumption that every black person I run into should not make direct eye contact with me, is not entitled to the job that I want, okay? And doesn't deserve the job that they got, okay? It's easier for a white guy with a criminal record to get a job than a black man with a college degree.
All right.
I want to say something too about the Public Defender's Office. We have a very competent Deputy Public Defender, Khadija Diggs, down in the Public Defender's Office. She was brought in here from Erie, and I guess when they found out she was actually a Pittsburgher ready to put down roots, she would have been a great one to be in line to be the Public Defender. But you see now they brought in somebody from outside. And Pittsburgh has a habit of bringing people in from outside who really don't plan on staying very long. But I hope this gentleman stays here, puts down roots, and really makes a difference. Because that young lady who's down there would have been a very good public defender also. So, you know, we've had talent down there, but there seems to be a situation in Pittsburgh where if you're from here and you want to stay here, then they don't want you. Okay, they want to bring in new people who they know when they come here and they see what's happening here. They get very discouraged by this community because we're a community that's, well, we're the worst community in the United States for African Americans. Okay, and so because of that, a lot of people when they come here, they get culture shock. They can't believe that we're just one big plantation. And it's very much controlled here. And so they're not used to that kind of lifestyle until they leave. And that's what Pittsburgh likes. So I just hope this gentleman stays here and tries to make a difference and
stands up for African American males.
Yeah.
And doesn't bow down to that pressure that he gets from the old boys network to conform, just try to hold on to his job instead of making a difference. Khadija Diggs was fired by him.
Yeah.
Ms. Parker, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
The committee's being reestablished, so I was wondering when it last was in existence and why it dissolved at that point.
I'm sorry, readdress that question again. I missed something.
That's okay. You said the committee's being reestablished, correct? When was it formally in effect, and why and when did that dissolve?
The Legal Redress Committee has always been in effect.
Okay.
It has not been as active as it should have been.
Okay.
And with me sitting now as the president of NAACP, I was very blessed to have, first of all, the two attorneys that are sitting here with me as part of the NAACP, and of course, Attorney Milton Brayfoot with several others that are also involved with this, that their interest has peaked from the issues that have happened in our community. Sometimes, some things happen to make things change. And again, I must say, I've been really totally blessed with the support that I've gotten, that we start in the right direction now. Because we've been a little bit silent we have to speak up now a little bit stronger than what we've been doing. And that's the direction I hopefully would like to lead and galvanize our members of NAACP and our community.
I appreciate Ms. Parker calling me. I mean, she called me when she decided she was going to run for president. And she basically said, and I was glad that she called me. I mean, it's something that's been burning in me. You know, I mean, you know, the Bible says that one can chase 1,000 and 2 10,000, but a threefold cord is not quickly broken. So when she called me, and I knew what her history had been in the community for advocacy, and I knew the passion that she had, I was glad she called me. I was more than willing to do whatever I believe God called me to do, and I think He called me to do it, which was to support her in becoming president and to offer a gift or any gift that God gave me. If it's nothing more than answering the phone or carrying stuff around, but just so happens I'm a lawyer, and, you know, I just lay that at her feet for any way that she feels fit to use it. Because your gift's it's not me, it's a gift. You give gifts away.
Elder, are you in private practice or do you work for a firm?
Private practice. I work with myself. I have a couple people to work for me, but I'm the only lawyer.
Ms. Parker, you said that it was recent incidents. So was it the 3 incidents that you were talking about
Absolutely.
earlier?
Absolutely.
And that's really what has brought this to the forefront for you then?
Part of what has brought it. This has been boiling to this. There's many issues that was background to this.
We call this a tale of 2 cities. The African American city, where we have a 56% African American unemployment, and the Caucasian city, which is the best city in the world to live in. And so, you know, this is not by accident. We want to remediate this, and we feel the way we're going to do it is in the courts, because we're attorneys. We want to do things legally, we want to do things correctly, and we're going to start right now.
And I want to thank you all for coming out. Yes, sir.
I got one more question.
Yeah, I got a question too.
For the lady attorneys with the NAACP. Are you with firms or private practice?
Private practice.
So all your attorneys that are working with you today own their own private practice?
Yes. That gives you strength. Yes, sir.
I have a couple questions. I was happy to hear you say that you want to be inclusive of everybody, and so what comes to my mind is just 2 weeks ago, or maybe a little over a week ago, there were there were 3 black women who were beat by a group of white brothers over at the Margaritaville bar. There's a big protest happening on next Sunday afternoon because these women were beat. There were 3 black women. And so I'm not sure, because I wasn't there, if it was because they were beat because they were black women in the white bar, and they got beat in the bar, and then they got kicked out, and a mob of guys beat these 3 women outside the bar with no police.
I'm not familiar with that. I didn't hear that.
It just happened.
Either.
No.
But this is, I work within this community, so this thing is that I'm not sure if it was because they were black women or because they were gay women. And so my question for that is, as we're talking about addressing legally things around the community, does that include gay and lesbian incidents?
Yes, it does. Are they human? Yes, it does.
Well, I was just asking because I know some.
You see, no, that has nothing to do with it. You see the issue of the
having
dog getting beat to death with a thing. If you can address issues of animals, I don't care what your preference is. I have nothing to do with that.
Well, I mean, I'm the same way. I don't have an issue with it. But my point is, I know people do have issue with it, which is why I'm asking. Because if those people, I mean, I work on the front lines within the LGBT community here. I'm on the state board of equality in Pennsylvania. So with all these other folks that are coming to the table around addressing this with these 3 sisters, that one is a member of my congregation. I want to be able to say call the NAACP as well. As
Absolutely.
To the same table and to the same conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Without having any, inhibitions about that. So I would just ask.
The traditional roots of the NAACP from a legal standpoint always included a vast majority of white people who had an abolitionist point of view. It was a coalition of Jewish people, Italian. I grew up in Homewood when Homewood was Jewish, Italian, and African American. Most people don't believe it, but I saw the Three Stooges at the Belmar Theater. And my dad's partner in his business was Al Grassi, an Italian man. They had a tuxedo shop and a formal shop together. When the riots hit in 1968 and Homewood was tore up, that was the beginning of the end of the coalition. Pittsburgh used to be the greatest melting pot in terms of the way it looked, the cultural areas in the hills. So traditionally the NAACP has been National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, but that association was everybody involved, not just African Americans.
But I did want to ask, just because I do, we have me personally, have been a strong tie with other groups that are doing equality.
Bring that
stuff.
strong tie right in here.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking, so I know
In
where
fact, I'm going to give
to go
you
with
this
that.
membership. Make copies of this.
The other part of it is for me. Are your efforts going to be supported financially to help pay for costs, or is this just something that?
We're soliciting funds to help pay for costs, because anytime you have an attorney, whether he's doing pro bono or not, there's costs to go in to get papers filled out.
Right.
The litigation is very costly.
Yeah.
So we're asking the public to support us financially with sending contributions to the NAACP.
Well, what I'm thinking is not
made directly
to
the Legal Redress Committee.
I'm thinking about, I'm on the advisory at Hines for African American men and boys. So when I hear you talking, first thing I'm thinking is we need to have you come and have a conversation, or we need to sit down and talk about maybe creating some kind of, we just had an RFP that came in last week where we're looking to give money to people that are doing things for African American men and boys.
Yeah, that's Stan Thompson. I used to work with him, and not only at the effort at Robert Morris. That's the African American Male Initiative through the R.K. Mellon Foundation. I think that it's time to turn that thing, which is basically an education thing, and those funds towards the issue of African American males. Regretfully, people like a Janet Ante, Reverend Janet Ante, and people who are very well heeled. She was a dear friend of mine. She has, unfortunately, a lot of people that are involved in the gay, lesbian, transgender community, they have more resource than African American males. And so when President Obama gets up yesterday and says, gay Americans, you know what I mean? The problem with that, I don't have any problem with him saying that, because I feel the same way he does. But you only mention those that have an interest. Let's be honest. You're only going to mention those. There's, the gun lobbyists and all that kind of thing. Listen,
they're in your face.
There's lobbyists. If you go to Harrisburg, there's lobbyists. Who's lobbying on behalf of inner city African American men? There's a lot of people lobbying on behalf of the gay community. Unfortunately, I'm with that. But maybe what the gay community needs to do is flaunt those things right there. And help us to do what needs to be done, so that some of the rights that they've got now.
But see, this is part of the reason why I'm asking, because I do have a lot of access to this community here in Pittsburgh, and I can help with that process. But that's on the other side of the table. Right. My thing about the foundation is this last RPP that we drafted was to seek new initiatives and new efforts that haven't been funded, because we, in the past 5 years, what we've given $15 million to has faltered, and it hasn't been successful. So now we're looking for new efforts and new people, or people who have ideas. And so my thought is that maybe we can help find some way to help fund something for African American males in the legal system or something. So that's why I'm saying.
Well, that's why we're doing a legal redress. So you can fund that.
Fantastic.
And we're having our attorneys at the chair. And let me say this to you, that we're about people and to change the community as a whole. And even though the president addressed the issue, that's not the city of Pittsburgh. This city is so closed off and so undiversified that it has to be addressed and have the inclusion. So when you empower the NAACP, that's inclusive of all the people.
Okay.
Yeah, NAACP doesn't care who you're sleeping with, how you sleeping with.
Yeah. Well, I get the national agenda, but sometimes the chapters are different. I'm a member of the Clareton chapter. You can't. There's certain things they're not going to touch.
As I say, this is a spirit here that's different than anything that people have seen before.
There's a new president.
This is a spirit.
I want to know for myself because I'm attached to a lot.
I know
before I jump in.
No, this is a spirit here that you haven't seen before.
Now, I will be saying I don't want to have to deal with the craziness.